Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mary Price. I'm the Events and Marketing Director at the Shingo Institute at Utah State University. I'm very excited to have Norbert Majerus and Sam Landers with us today. Norbert is a Shingo Faculty Fellow, and both he and Sam are retirees from the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Both of these gentlemen have worked in research and innovation, and they're going to share some of their thoughts and experiences with us today. We published an article in the December newsletter. It's titled Thinking Outside the Lean Box. The article goes hand in hand with the topic we're discussing today. You can find that article on our website. Simply go to shingo.org, click the media tab, and select the blog. You'll find the article there. I would encourage each of you to read it when you have a few moments. As a reminder, all of our monthly webinars can be found on our Shingo YouTube channel. You can access that from our website under the media tab and just select videos. And with that, Norbert, I'll turn the time over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, and thanks, Sam, for joining us, even though we're still trying to get Sam, the voice connected. The focus on innovation has always been a key part of every company, because companies know very well that you have to innovate in order to stay competitive. And the way you innovate is eventually you create an innovation culture, which is very similar to creating a lean culture. And but there's one little problem. The innovation does not come automatically with the implementation of lean. The good news is you can very, very easily tag it on to a good lean program or a good lean culture. In fact, Sam and we worked together at Goodyear for quite a long time. We both spent, I think Sam spent even more than 40 years at Goodyear. And Sam really was involved with every innovation that Goodyear had during his long career there. As I said, we had a great innovation culture, and I credit that great innovation culture for how easy it was for us to implement lean in the global 3 innovation centers. And I've been thinking about that a lot, how those two are connected, and found out that the people part of lean and the people part of a good innovation culture are very, very similar. And so I'm convinced that if you have a lean organization, a lean culture, it's not difficult to turn that into a prosperous innovation culture. And the way you do it is the same the way you did lean. You learn the principles, you see how the principles apply, and then you can take it from you can really take it from there. Try to implement those principles so they work for you. And innovation, when we talk about principles, you are not. It's very difficult to force innovation. You really have to create the environment to let innovation happen. And but I want to start with a key item here. At Goodyear in the early 90s, Goodyear was a few days from bankruptcy, and it was really. They had exhausted virtually everything in terms of cost cutting and everything else that that company normally do in a financial distress situation like that. And at the end of the day, they realized, hey, we have a good innovation culture. Maybe we can launch a product that will get us out of all these financial troubles. And Sam actually was the one who created that product. It was the AquaThread. Sam, can we hear you now?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. This is just in time. Well, Sam, tell us a little bit just about the results of the AquaTread.
Well, as Goodyear entered the 1980s, it was in big trouble. It was losing market share. It had huge debt that had to pay off, and AquaTread got the attention of customers. Goodyear was no longer a commodity. All of a sudden, people were interested in Goodyear and Goodyear products, and it was because of a very innovative product, the AquaTread. Within 4 years, well, the first year, Goodyear set a new record for sales for a single product, the AquaTread, over 1 million tires. And the income increase, the sales over 20%. This just wasn't AquaTread, but AquaTread brought people into the stores, and they bought Goodyear products. The profits over 400% by the end of 4 years. So it basically saved the company, turned things around.
And that is a great example of what innovation can do for you. And this was not a single case. There were several other ones later. And by the way, but Sam, tell us a little bit about, for me, a key principle in innovation, just like in Lean, is it has to be part of the company, it has to be part of the strategy. So tell us a couple of sentences about how at Goodyear innovation was part of the strategy.
Was part of what? I'm sorry.
The strategy, the corporate strategy.
Yeah, the tire industry is very, very competitive. And to survive, you have to constantly be satisfying the customer better and better. And that's about innovation, creating new value for the customer. And this goes back to the beginning. Goodyear's been around 125 years. And in order to compete and survive, they had to constantly innovate. So it was part of the culture.
But we also had an edict that we had to obsolete our own products, right?
Yes, that there was a basic underlying strategy was we weren't going to wait for our competitors to obsolete our products. We were going to move faster. We were going to obsolete our own products. We were going to stay ahead of everybody. That was kind of a basic philosophy of the leadership in this very competitive market. That's what survival was about.
Yeah, and this all happened with a very conservative company, a company really focused on safety and quality, and was trying to avoid every risk possible.
Yes, yeah, from the beginning, tires were it enabled vehicle control, so it was all about safety. Traction, braking, acceleration, cornering. The tires enabled vehicles to be safe, and Goodyear was obsessed with protecting their customers. That tires was such a key element for safety for vehicles that nothing could go wrong. So there was extensive testing, very, very careful to make sure that we were protecting the customers.
But how did we come up with the courage, Sam, to take this risk and put these new products out there?
Well, Goodyear learned how to manage risk from the beginning, because you had this very competitive environment where you had to constantly be changing and improving and providing more value. But at the same time, you had to ensure quality. So Goodyear developed their own tools to manage risk. Early versions of FMEA and tools like that evolved in the thinking. And it was just the way things were done. We had to innovate, but we had to ensure the safety of customers at the same time.
Oh, yeah, so you made it very clear that it can be done at the same time. But you also we always had the leadership backing on this, didn't we? Even through the failures that, and I'm sure you were associated with more failures than successes.
Yes, we don't talk about that, but no, uh, there was failures. Well, let's say the products did not meet expectations. That was the failure. But I think that yes, there was a constant need to change. When Goodyear followed the voice of the customer and really tried to provide a need that the customer needed, it was successful. There was many times when leadership saw an opportunity based on technology that had been developed and thought that the customer would be excited about this new product. So it was technology driven as opposed to customer driven. In those instances, the products were not as successful.
That's interesting, but tell us a little bit about going to your leader with that great new idea that will turn things upside down. What was the reaction?
Well, it's always caution. There was kind of okay, show me the data. Prove to me that it was this new innovation of yours provides the value and is safe. Show me the data. In order to show them, seeing is believing, we had to develop physical products. We had to transfer the idea into some physical, bring it into the real world.
Aha, there we go.
Yeah, and test it and provide data. And Goodyear enabled us to be able to make this transition from the idea, the theory, into the real world, and show them the possibilities with a real physical product and data.
But that's a very key point. That also is what aligns everybody in the company, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
tell us, you did not come up with all these, well, you may have some of these ideas, but you were always telling me you did not, even though you had your hands in every innovation, you did not do it alone. So tell us a little bit about how you got that collaboration from everybody in the company that had to work with you.
Well, the team that I was part of was very unique. It was more of an innovation hub, that the people that were part of the team were very knowledgeable, but they also knew people that knew stuff. They networked into all the key areas of the company, whether it was compounding or manufacturing. So there was linkage, and part of the responsibility of the members was to see what new stuff was coming along, be aware of what possibilities existed. And so when a product came along, we had all these pieces we were aware of. And if they connected with a need of the product, then it became part of the program. And we were very careful that the team shared the ownership of the new product. and the innovation. It wasn't ours, it was the company's. So the other areas in the value chain were part of the innovation process. They had responsibility also.
But that is a very key principle of deploying a successful innovation program. You have to really have everybody engaged in not just throw it out and say, here, look what a great idea I have here. You have to have them engaged from the beginning, contributing and feeling part of it all the way through the deployment. And the certain humility is required for that, of course, because you don't tell anybody. You just, and you said it, you just try to get all these ideas to come together to contribute and make something that really works. So let me summarize here a little bit. One last question for you, Sam. How did you feel when we brought Lean into the picture?
Well, I think you know.
Yeah, I know.
As an innovator, I question everything, including Lean. And my initial perception was that it was a threat to innovation, let's put it that way. At least all the things that my team did seemed to be threatened. And after thinking about it a great deal, I came to the understanding that Lean should not be about maximizing the flow of work through the process. It's about maximizing the flow of value through the process. And value starts at the very beginning with the creation of ideas and possibility of new value. And the focus of Lean when it was first implemented was at the other end of the process in the manufacturing and the final verification of the product. There, the value proposition is pretty well defined, and you have rules about implementation. So you want to zero in and fix on that. And so every product has that new value in it, no variation. On the other end of the spectrum, right at the beginning, there's a great uncertainty, and you don't know what the value is in the beginning. And you're searching for that value. And once you find it, you have to develop it. And it's kind of a, you try and you fail, but you learn. You try, you fail, you learn.
Yeah, very good.
And so the process at the very beginning is very different. And I believe that leadership needs to understand the whole process. I was lucky to be in all the positions from research to technology development to product development into the implementation and the manufacture. So I have an appreciation for that whole part of the process. And I know how it changes, how the thinking changes as you go along. And you can't take the thinking in the process and try to impose it on the beginning. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, Sam, you said something very important here. Lean focuses on the flow of value, and for innovation, it's the flow of the value from an idea all the way to selling the product at the end. And that's where companies should focus their lean effort when it comes to the innovation process. So let me summarize very quickly here. Everything is about creating value for the customer. Innovation creates a special value, and that's what it's all about. And that should be anchored in the corporate strategy so that everybody in the company knows and can align behind that strategy. The courage is important, and you have to learn to manage that risk. And you talked about a lot of testing, a lot of experiments, and so on. That was used for that. And a big part of also managing the risk and engaging leaders and engaging everybody in the company is to have something to show them, not just something to talk about, but have an actual product that you can show, and that everybody understands, and that you have a visual and a goal there for everybody. Also, very important, what you said was about creating that hub, but not getting everybody engaged in your idea, not just throwing it out there, selling it to the leadership, but getting everybody engaged so that everybody has eventually ownership of the product. And that's how you get the best collaboration and the best results. Because you can't do it alone. You need all these other parts of the organization to be part of it. Well, this covers just a couple of principles in the short time that we had here. So Mary, with this, I'd like to open it for questions.
Yes, I wanted to go right back to what we were just discussing about flow, because we do have a question. They asked, how or who defined the value, and was the entire team seeing and understanding the value?
Sam, you want to take a
Yeah.
shot?
In the case of Aquatred, we were challenged to come up with something new and exciting. And we realized we did not know what new and exciting was. So we went to the customer, and there was a number of focus groups across the country. We developed 10 prototypes. They were very quick, inexpensive, but they looked like real tires. And it was from wild to mild, or mild to wild. And we allowed the customers, market research, allowed the customers to talk about each one of those. And in that session, the customers, the need for better wet traction emerged. And they gravitated towards what was the Aquatred prototype, an early version of it. And they started to tell us how it worked in order to give them better. So the customer very much told us what was of value to them. This was an emerging need that we knew it was there, but we didn't realize it was growing as fast as it was.
Yeah,
And so the customers sensitized us to that, and also told us what concept, what tire they perceive best solved their problem for them.
Yeah, Henry Ford said, if I had asked the customer, they would have said, get us faster horses. And this is a very key point. Value is defined by the customer, but the customer often doesn't know what they want. And this came out very clear that after you showed them some visuals, some real tires, some prototypes, the need emerged. The customer really realized this is something that we need, even though they did not specifically ask for it. Very important point.
Following up on that as well, someone asked, how long was that process of innovation for you?
Which process? The process of designing a tire, or the process of implementing Lean?
Designing the tire.
Oh, designing some, then it's yours.
Okay, the Aquatred was very interesting. It came out of a task force that was charged to look at the future, to predict the future, look at weak signals, what's happening out there. And this was before computers. So we storyboarded a room with all the things that we found. And one of them was a anti-hydroplaning concept this was in 1980, so it was 10 years before the Aquatret need came up. And we envisioned a new product with this channel down the center, and it basically went on the shelf for 10 years. And it just happened to be one of the concepts which we included in the array of possibilities that we showed customers.
Yeah,
So
that's a key point.
don't
Innovation takes
kill,
a break, right?
right. You know, they talk about killing ideas. I don't kill any ideas. You know, I put a tag on ideas that are not very good, but all ideas, all possibilities, there's timing involved with it.
Yeah.
The need has to be there along with the technology, and it's timing.
Very good point. Don't throw anything away. It needs an idea and an opportunity, and the two need to connect. And the idea may be here, the opportunity comes 10 years later. And very
Right.
important innovation principle.
Very true. Norbert, I'm going to ask this question to you. They asked, when you think about lean or principle-based continuous improvement, how can you prepare the culture for innovation?
Well, if you have a good lean culture, it's you are halfway there, Mary. All you have to, your people will understand. Well, you have the people part already implemented, humility, respect, and all these factors that you need for a lean culture, and people have focused on lean principles to build the lean culture. Well, now you focus on some of the innovation principles, and then you do it the same way. You implement it lean. You just bring the innovation principles, understand the principles, see how they work, where they would work, and get people engaged. Educate the people, get them engaged in understanding it, learning it, understanding it, and implementing it. And we did a few key principles here. We covered them. If you look at strategy deployment, well, if you have a good strategy deployment process already, you have to include your innovation goals and everything in there. So you are halfway there, and that was my feeling. You are halfway there, and just do it and learn it and do it. That's the way that's the suggestion that I would make to people.
Norbert, I think that leadership is extremely important.
Yeah.
Leadership defines the company's thinking box, the size of it. They can be very small and narrow and very controlled, focused, or they can open things up and promote innovation. The leadership defines the size of the corporation's thinking box. And they need to know that everything they say, everything they do, all the customers are listening and they're taking the cures. The HR procedures that tell customers what's right, what their job is, and so on, it's very important. And if you want to create an innovative culture, it has to be led from the top, and HR has to be in sync with it.
Yeah, Mary, if we can't answer all the questions, please send them to me. Sam and I will answer those questions.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that we have more questions than we have time, but I do want to ask this very last question. And he asks, when you're growing and learning and trying to connect lean with innovation, what kind of new knowledge should they acquire?
That's a good point. You really need to learn the basic principles of innovation. And you have to dig around for it. I don't think there's one single book for it. But the key piece is you have to start with leadership. I found that leadership, at Goodyear, we had a good case. Leadership understood it. But most companies, I see leaders talk about innovation, but they really don't understand the basic principles. You won't have to sit them down for 3 weeks. I think it can be done very very quickly. They need to know the principles, and then, of course, the people who do the day-to-day work may have to spend a little more time learning it. Unfortunately, I can't give you a single publication, a single book. There's a lot on Google. If that person would send me an email, I'd be happy to give them some other references, or maybe come to Orlando, Mary, and we will teach those in Orlando.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I was just going to mention that. For those of you that are listening, Norbert will be teaching a workshop at the conference in Orlando. It'll be on May 8th, and the conference is May 9th and 10th. So I'd encourage you to come. I'll be sending out a special discount code for those of you that have actually attended the webinar, so you can save a little bit of money and hopefully make some connections and learn some more about innovation. So thank you so much, Norbert and Sam, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with others. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our attendees. And we'll see you again next month.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.